Welcome to Module 4, Instructional Approach. This is the piece that follows designing our university courses. Remember, we looked at our conceptions of learning. That led us to think about our context for the course that we're designing. Following that, we thought about our essential learnings within that course, the learning outcomes. Then we looked at the the evaluation strategies, and then finally the teaching learning activities. So this piece is branching off the teaching and learning activities. To be able to make those choices, we have to also think a little bit about our instructional style and how that fits perhaps with our learners' preferences as well. So before we jump in here, I'll just explain the reason why you see me in the corner of the video. I've been reading a little bit about teacher immediacy, that is to say, the ability to see whomever's facilitating a session, their face, their emotion, and how that enables better learning in some cases, particularly online. So we're going to try this out here. You'll tell me what you think, perhaps the next time we see one another, and see where it goes. So let's jump in together here. I want to start by looking at the Blackboard site. This is what it looks like for Module 4. And as we scroll down here, you see the online module instructions. You've obviously seen that if you're watching the video right now. You'll also see that I've got the PowerPoint posted here. You can see that afterwards, the video, if you want to look at the slides more carefully. The worksheets, you might want to print those off, or you can work online. There's a PDF and Word document. I don't have them posted right there now, but they will be when you see it. That way you can follow along. We're going to have reflective activities that I'm going to point to in the context of this video. And then I'll invite you to pause the video and then try out those activities, those exercises as we go through. And then you can keep going as we go along. Also a bit of an experiment, so you can tell me how that works. All right. So let's scroll back here, and then we can start with the slides. So this is what I have in mind for this particular video. There'll be 3 videos in total. There's this one on instructional approach. We'll also have one on lesson planning and putting that together. That'll come a little bit later. And then finally, I'll have a few seconds or a minute speaking about the micro teaching before you sign up for that. We'll talk about that in greater detail in class, but at least it'll give you something to work toward. All right. So in this particular video, in this module, we're going to speak a little bit to your role as an instructor, as a facilitator of learning, touch a little bit on the characteristics of effective facilitation, and a few models and ideas that I've utilized myself and come across here. We're going to talk a little bit about traits of young adult learners, a little differently than we did at the outset with the 21st century learners. We're going to model this after Malcolm Knowles' theory in a little bit. I'm going to talk about learning preferences. And lastly, this 5th point speaks to some of the items that came up in the questionnaire that I had you fill out at the first class with your expectations for the course. About 6 or 7 people were speaking to challenges regarding facilitation or how to get up in front of people a little bit. Facilitating groups, that kind of thing. So this is a little piece that I want to put in about those topics, and we'll expand on that a little bit later as the course goes on as well. So let's jump in. So the first piece, I want you to think about your role as an instructor, right? In the context of your course, what does that look like for particularly this course? Maybe that's different depending on the courses in your discipline, but for the course you're designing now, what is your role as an instructor? Is it to guide your students in the context of new skills that they're learning? Is it to share new information and knowledge to them based on your experiences or your profession or theories or concepts that they're studying? So I want you to think a little bit about that, and that should be the first question in the worksheets. So use that space to complete that. You can pause the video now. All right, now that you've completed that and thought a little bit about this in the context of your course, I think that's important. We're going to build on that as we go through. You've thought about the role. Now I want you to think a little bit about how instructors characterize what they do effectively. And in order to do that, proposing a little activity here. I want you to think about a recent teaching event that you attended, right? Where you were the learner. So this event may be a conference presentation or a workshop you've gone to, or this course. Maybe you're thinking or could think of a past class where you were the learner in the context. Okay, so give that a thought here, relive that in your mind, one or two of those recent events. Now that you've thought of that event, I want you to answer this next question. And the question is the second question on the first page of your handout, right? Or the worksheets, I should say. The question is, what are the characteristics of the experience that helped you learn, right? What characterized that experience? Perhaps it was something that the facilitator did, um, something that the learning situation had explicitly put out there. For instance, maybe it was very comfortable, maybe it was well lit, maybe that's the characteristics, but maybe of the facilitator, it could be that they ensured that everything was very relevant, the nature of the examples, or that everything was organized. I don't know. Think about the characteristics of that experience that were most helpful to you and complete that in this second quadrant. Now that you've finished that piece, the third quadrant here is to identify your top 5 characteristics. I want you to think about the most important ones to you. Perhaps you have more than 5, perhaps you have less, and that's all right. So I want you to think about those top 5 ones. Write them down on your first page of the sheet there. And once you've done that, I want you to share those with us because I think it'd be interesting to see what that looks like across the class. Now, on the Blackboard site, I'm just going to scroll back there. You're going to see just under the PowerPoint and worksheet section, there's a place called Survey. So this is the first opportunity for us to look at that together. So by clicking here, top 5 characteristics of an instructor, you're going to go to a survey here. Right? And all you have to do is continue. This is just the instructions. It's written that way in Blackboard. You can see the little arrow. It's just outside the scope of your screen. It says continue. And when you go continue, you'll be able to fill out your response. There's the question. And then just type that out right here. And then once you do that, you can just hit save and submit. And it'll submit right back to our regular screen. Sound good? All right. Seems a little different on my end, but that's all right. So if we come back to the presentation now, once you've done that, I wanted to share with you other perceptions that learners have had. There have been a few studies, particularly in the States and in Canada, that have asked very similar questions of their students. One gentleman, Sass, in 1989, he had a graduate class in education, and these were students that did their B.Ed the year before. And so all of his incoming students, he asked the same question. He says, what were the characteristics that defined your best learning situations for you? And almost always, over the last 10 years that he did that, he got nearly the same responses in the same order. And numerous other studies have confirmed very similar responses as well. And so we've put them in the order that they are shared by students in this case. So these are the learner perceptions, right, of what the best teacher characteristics are, or teaching space characteristics. The first one that always comes up is the instructor's enthusiasm. So that is to say, somebody who's very enthusiastic and passionate about their topic generally is one of the major value-added elements of a teaching experience. The second one is relevance of the material, the content, organization of the course or of a particular session or lesson is very important. Appropriate level of difficulty. That is to say that it's not shot too far or too easy for students, and that it's ideal for them, or the pace of the courses. Things aren't rolling too quickly or too slowly. Um, and the ability to gauge that by the facilitator and make adjustments as they go along. Active involvement in the course, is to say active learning. Um, variety of methodologies and teaching strategies used, rapport with the teacher, the students. And then yet again, this kind of meets with number two, use of appropriate, concrete, strong examples. So these are some of the ones that the learners are saying across the board. These are undergraduate predominantly, with the exception of Sass. He did a graduate degree in education there. The last study I'm looking through, oh, excuse me, Delaney at the bottom there, that was Memorial University, and they asked this question for face-to-face classes and for online classes to see if there were teaching characteristics for online classes that were important as well. And of course, there was more jargon related to technology, but a lot of the same things emerged. And I'll see if I can't post that study here or bring it to class. That's what I'll do for the next run. It was well done. So what I did is I took these learner perceptions and things that they like to see in their instructors and their facilitators. They feel that those things help learning and connect with a bit of research in that area. And that comes from the 7 Principles of Good Practice in Undergraduate Education. I'm not sure if you've seen those before. It's by Chickering and Gamson. It's an older paper, but it's a seminal piece and has been referred to countless times in higher education. So you're going to see those in the left-hand column there. Now they're listed 1 through 10. The reason why that is there were originally 7 in 1987, but 3 of them have been added by other researchers as well. Now, rather than me explain these to you, I'm going to have you pause the video here and look up readings A and B. And those are the second and third links under this video or under the worksheet section in the Blackboard site. And the first one is the original paper. It's very short by Chickering and Ganson. It'll give you an idea of where this all came from. And the second one is another explanation of the 7 principles, but it has clear strategies for implementing these. So I'll have you take a look at that, read those 2 papers, and then we'll come right back in. Go ahead. All right, now that you had a chance to read those papers, I'm kind of curious to see how that all fit in for you. My question is, what ideas can you think of in your disciplinary context that will enact these principles? And are some of the ones listed, particularly in the second paper there, feasible for you in the context of your teaching? Perhaps there are a few little ideas that you might consider. Now, coming back to this particular slide, I had a good time trying to connect the learner perceptions that we spoke about a little while ago, and then this particular research. And I think there are some interesting connections between what students are seeing and saying and what some of the research is saying as well. Maybe you find other connections or other things that are linked there as well. Now that we